Alright. Good day, everyone. This is your captain speaking. Today, we will be taking a look at one of the most notorious pirates to ever sail the seven seas during the Golden Age of Piracy. A woman of renowned beauty and tenacity. One of the few female pirates ever in recorded history. So weigh anchor and hoist the mizzen, lads, because today, we're digging into the history of Anne Bonny to discover the lady behind the legend. Anne Bonny was born Anne McCormick on the 8th of March in the year 1697 near Cork in the province of Munster, in what was at the time the Kingdom of Ireland. Though some sources place her birth invariably in or around the year 1700, one thing we know for certain is that she was the illegitimate daughter of lawyer William McCormick and one of his serving girls, Mary Brennan. Perhaps because of his carnal indiscretions, or for some other unknown reason, Anne's father would move himself, Anne and Anne's mother, to London to put some distance between himself and his wife's family. Whilst living in London, William dressed young Anne as a boy and began referring to her as Andy, passing her off as his son, whom he was bringing up to be a lawyer's clerk. When William's estranged wife learned of this, she would proceed to cut all financial ties with him. From London, William, Mary, and Anne then moved across the pond to the British colonies in the Carolinas, dropping the Mick prefix from their last name to better blend in with the other colonists of Charlestown. Though forced to endure humble beginnings in the New World, William's knowledge of law and skill in trade soon amassed them enough money to finance a townhouse, and later a plantation outside of town. Anne's mother died when Anne was 12 years old, and her father, failing to establish himself as an attorney, turned merchant instead, and through this amassed a substantial personal fortune. By the age of 13, Anne was known for her brilliant red hair and her radiant beauty, but also for her fiery temper, with some sources reporting that she once stabbed a servant girl with a knife in a fit of anger. At some point during her early teenage years, Anne would meet a poor sailor and pirate by the name of James Bonny, who married her in hopes of inheriting her father's wealthy estate. However, Anne's father William did not approve of James Bonny as a suitable match for his daughter, and William would ultimately disown Anne, and for lack of a better term, kick her out of his house. And though there is no record of the event, it was rumored that Anne tried to set fire to her father's plantation in retaliation for him disowning her. At some point between the years 1714 and 1718, Anne and James Bonny would make their way south to the city of Nassau on New Providence Island in the Bahamas. Nassau, at the time, had already been well established as a safe haven for English pirates, a crowd that the newlywed Bonnies would easily fall in with. However, their marriage was not to last long, as when Governor Woodes Rogers arrived in Nassau in 1718, James Bonny turned coat and began working for him as an informant, feeding him information about the other pirates, both known and unknown in the area, leading to the arrests of many. The young Mrs. Bonny greatly resented her husband for these deeds. It was during this time that Anne met and mingled with other pirates at the tavern in Nassau. Among these were Captain Charles Vane, Mary Read, who at the time was disguised as a man named Mark Read, and Calico Jack Rackham, the latter of whom she would later take as her lover and husband. At some point, Rackham offered money to James Bonny as an incentive for him to divorce Anne so that he could marry her instead. But James, as expected, refused, threatening Rackham with bodily harm just for the mere suggestion. Unwilling to accept this, however, when Rackham left Nassau, Anne would go with him, disguising herself as a man to join his crew, a deception that only Rackham himself and a still disguised Mary Read were aware of. Her ruse could only last so long, though, and she would soon become noticeably pregnant. She would spend the remainder of her pregnancy in Cuba, eventually giving birth to a son. It is unknown what became of this child, but Anne would in turn return to Rackham's crew and continue her life of piracy. Bonny, Rackham, and Reed would spend years sailing the waters around Jamaica, and Anne's reputation for going into combat alongside Rackham and Reed would earn her a mention in Woodes Rogers' list of most wanted pirates that was published in the Boston Newsletter. In October of the year 1720, the crew headed by Rackham, Reed, and Bonny was attacked at sea by a sloop captained by the English commissioned privateer Jonathan Barnett. Barnett was operating on behalf of Governor Nicholas Laws of Jamaica. The crew and Rackham, too drunk and hungover from a night of heavy revelry, put up little resistance and were captured. Bonny and Reed, despite their own efforts, were also taken prisoner. They were all taken to Jamaica for trial, where they would all be convicted and sentenced to be hanged by the neck until dead. Anne's last recorded words to her husband Jack Rackham as he was led away to the gallows were, "If you had fought like a man, you need not have been hanged like a dog." Seeking mercy, Anne Bonny and Mary Reed pleaded their bellies, seeking amnesty on account of their both being pregnant at the time of their capture. The court granted the two women a stay of execution until they had given birth, after which they would each be hanged. Mary Reed died in prison on the 28th of April, in the year 1721 at the approximate age of 35. Her cause of death is not listed, but she most likely succumbed to a fever brought on by complications during the birth of her child. There is no record of release or execution for Anne Bonny, leading many to speculate as to her ultimate fate. There is a ledger that lists Anne Bonny, spelled A-N-N instead of A-N-N-E, as being buried on the 29th of December 1733 in Jamaica, though some theorize that she was eventually released and returned to the English colonies in America, where she later died as an old woman in 1782, though this too is unsubstantiated. The last official mention of Anne Bonny is from the year 1721 in prison. She was 24 years of age at the time of her seeming disappearance. Anne Bonny, despite the briefness of her career, is remembered as one of the most famous pirates of the Golden Age of Piracy. And though there is little to go off of in terms of written record of her life, her legend has more than made up for this dearth of information. Her status as one of the few female pirates in the era, and her association with other well-known buccaneers have earned her a permanent place in the annals of history. She has been portrayed many times in film, literature, anime, television, and video games. From the hit Starz series Black Sails, where she is portrayed by English actress Clara Paget, to the successful video games Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag and Uncharted 4 A Thief's End. To One Piece and Detective Conan, the legend of Anne Bonny lives on. Thank you all for watching. This has been Lady Behind the Legend. Once again, I am your host, Captain Crowseye. Leave a like and a comment if the mood strikes you, and God's willing, I'll see you all next time. Farewell.